Sometimes these conversations with CIOs just stand on their own. They don't need a lot of conversation from me. In this conversation with Ed Marx, I asked him what you do to prepare for a new job. Before you're going in, how do you think about it? Especially a C-suite job, how do you think about it? What do you do to prepare yourself for the role? Have a listen.
So, like what I usually talk about is in your preparation, the first pre 30 days is you always have to be true to your current employer and then true to your family because when you start this new job, it's going to require a lot of effort, a lot of extra effort. So you may not be available as much. So I'd really take care of those two things first, make sure there's good transition where I am and make sure that I take time with my family. To the extent I can get involved still, I like to do that. I did that before arriving at the Cleveland Clinic. So I learned as much as I could about the organization. So I had them send me a bunch of information. So I requested a lot of information. And then depending on that lead time, I had opportunity to have weekly meetings. So I had about 6 weeks lead time. And if you afforded that luxury, it's nice just to get engaged a little bit ahead of time. So those are the sort of things I would do is whatever research I could do ahead of time so that when I arrived on day one, I could sort of hit the ground running.
Yeah, and there's a lot of wisdom in that. I mean, the two things I would say is I went into my role as a CIO with pretty bad habits. They don't get better when you start the role. They get worse. So I ended up putting on 30 pounds and lived a pretty unhealthy lifestyle for about 6 years of my life. So I'd say if all you have is 30 days, make sure you get your habits in line. Spending the quality time with your family is important, health-wise important. So make sure you get all those things and recognize they typically aren't hiring a CIO because everything's going swimmingly. Very rarely is that the case. So your first year is probably going to be a very busy year. So so getting ready.
Great insights from Ed Marx, CIO of Cleveland Clinic. Great conversation, great back and forth on how do you get prepared for that next role, and a lot of good insights there. One, be true to your existing employer. It says a lot about you, about your integrity, how you leave an organization and how you come into a new organization are two very important things. Take care of your personal life. There's it's interesting. A lot of people. One of my mentors early on said, even if you get a break between two jobs of 2 weeks, make sure you take that break. He said and I was like, well, of course you're going to take that break. And he said, at some point you're going to get that job and they're going to say, hey, we need you to start immediately. And you're going to be tempted to do that. He said, don't do it. It's the worst thing you can do. It communicates the wrong thing to your new employer, and it communicates a horrible thing to your family, which is that you're not willing to take that time in between the role you're currently in and the new role and the stressful role you're going into to spend time with your family. It's one of the few times in your career where you're going to have 2 weeks of no emails, no phone calls. You can actually dedicate some specific time to your family. And I think my response to Ed in that video is take care of yourself personally. Make sure that you are eating well, that you're exercising. Nobody wants to hear that in a video like this, but it is so important when you get into those roles because the pace is going to be it's going to come at you pretty quickly. You need to be at the top of your game. What you put into your body really does matter. How much exercise you get really does matter. The so what is, don't just walk into a new role thinking, it's just business as usual. They hired you because things are difficult. They expect you to jump in and to solve some very challenging problems. If they weren't challenging, they wouldn't need you. So get yourself prepared for the new role that you're just taking on.